Hi, it's Feature from Sewmate. Welcome to my channel. If you want to see how I make this beautiful stable knit dress, please stay tuned. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and make sure to turn on your notification bell so that you get notified each time I upload new videos. You will need a no dart bodice block to do this. I'll leave a link in the description below and a link above as well. Get a folded pattern paper lengthwise and put the folded part towards you. Now we're going to start with the front. Align your center front with the fold line. Trace around the pattern, making sure to mark all the notches. Lift your block. Lengthen your dress to your desired length. I'm using 40 centimeters, which is inclusive of my 2 centimeter hem allowance. Square a line across and square another line at the hip line. With the curved ruler, smoothen the curve. Lower your center front neckline by 2 centimeters and widen it by 2 centimeters as well. With your curved ruler, join these 2 points together to form our new lowered neckline. Now I'm adding a seam allowance. I'm using 1 centimeter. Coming in with my curved ruler just to smoothen the curve. Now I'm squaring in my waistline and drawing in my neck facing for the front dress. Just follow through the outer curve here for our seam allowance with 7 centimeters right round like I'm doing here, making sure to square at the center front and at the shoulder. Now coming in with my curved ruler to smoothen the curve. Drawing in my shoulder seam allowance for the dress, 0.6 centimeters since I'll be using an overlocker. Now I'm going to trace off my facing for the front dress. Put a new pattern paper under the pattern piece and trace off the facing like I'm doing here with the tracing wheel. Get the pattern piece out and just cut it through using the tracing wheel marks that are there. And labeling the pattern piece, front facing, cut 1 on fold, and I put my initial. So the center front is going to be on fold. Now adding a grain line to the pattern piece parallel to the center front. And trimming off 3 millimeters off the neckline edge. Now cut around your pattern. Now open your pattern and with your free hand just trace on a nice cutout pattern like I'm doing here. You don't need to measure anything, just draw anything you feel satisfied with. And come in with the curved ruler just to smoothen everything out. Now just complete all your guidelines like I'm doing here. Come in about 1.5 centimeters from both ends of the cutout line and put notches there. Next, jot points down which are evenly spaced about 5 centimeters apart. You don't need to measure anything, just use your eye on this. Then with your straight ruler, just draw straight lines like I'm doing here. So we're going to be cutting through these lines and spreading them apart. So first cut the cutout off, like I'm doing here. And then we're going to cut through each line, but not through the side seam there, and spreading them for about approximately 5 centimeters. You don't need to measure anything, just use your eye on this, it doesn't really matter. So cutting through our first line there, taping it down. Spreading apart about 5 centimeters. Next line, cutting it through, leaving it hanging at the armhole there and tapping it down. Spreading about 5 centimeters again. Do the same on the third line. Spread it out and tap it down. Repeat same until you get to the last guideline. Now tap everything down like I'm doing here. And get your curved ruler and just connect these points nicely to form a nice smooth curve. Now adding my joining seam allowance for this part, which is 1 centimeter, since I'll be using a sewing machine for this part. Use your curved ruler to just smoothen everything up. And remember to transfer your notches to the edge of the pattern. Now cut around your pattern. And just make sure to tap everything down, like I'm doing here. Adding the notches to the pattern. So this part is going to be gathered from notch to notch. And labeling the pattern, front dress, cut 1, and I put my initial. And adding the grain line to the pattern piece. Now tap down the cutout piece like I'm doing here. And labeling the pattern piece, front dress cutout, cut 1, and I put my initial. Now adding my joining seam allowance, which is 1 centimeter as well, and transferring the notches to the edge there. Now adding my grain line, and cutting around the pattern. Our front patterns are finished. Now we're moving on to making the back. So starting with the back, trace around the block as usual, making sure to mark all the notches. Lift your block. Lengthen your dress to your desired length. I'm still using 40 centimeters, which is inclusive of my 2 centimeters hem allowance. Square across and square down from the hip line. Come in with your curved ruler to smoothen the curve. Square in your waistline and draw in your shoulder seam allowance 0.6 centimeters like we did with the front. Widen the neckline 2 centimeters and square line down, and lower the center back neckline by 2 centimeters again and square line across. Join these 2 points with a curved ruler like I've done. Now adding a seam allowance 1 centimeter like I'm doing here. Smoothen everything with a curved ruler. So the center back is going to be on fold in this pattern. Now drawing in our back facing, so follow through the last seam allowance line and just add 7 centimeters right round like I'm doing, making sure to square at the center back and the shoulder, and smoothen everything with a curved ruler like I'm doing here. Now get a fresh pattern paper and put it under your facing piece. Now trace it out with a tracing wheel like I'm doing here. Get it out and cut it out using the tracing wheel marks on there. So this is the center back and it's going to be on fold. Now labeling the pattern, back facing, cut 1 on fold, and I put my initial and adding my grain line parallel to the center back. Now measuring 3 millimeters from the neck edge, we're going to trim it off like I'm doing here. And labeling the main pattern, back dress, cut 1 on fold, and I put my initial, adding notches to the pattern, adding the grain line parallel to the center back, and cutting around the pattern. And our back patterns are finished. Now moving on to making the sleeve. You will need your basic sleeve block pattern for stable knit fabrics. I'll leave a link in the description below and a link above as well. So trace around the block as usual, making sure to mark all the notches. Lift your block. Draw in your grain line, your elbow line, and your wrist line. We're going to make an elbow length sleeve, so coming to the elbow line, add 2 centimeters hem allowance there and just draw a straight line. Now we're going to fold through the new hem line, which is the elbow line like I'm doing here, and cut around the pattern. Labeling the pattern, sleeve, cut 1 pair, and I put my initial, outlining the notches there. So we're going to use the original grain line, and our sleeve pattern is finished as well. So all our patterns are finished. Now we're moving on to sewing. Now moving on to sewing our dress, what you need are your completed patterns, your fabric, and your cutting tools. So I'm using this double knitted floral fabric. So next we're moving on to cutting our fabrics. So all our pattern pieces are cut and ready to sew. So the first thing we're gonna do is to take our front piece and we're going to go to our sewing machine and sew 2 rows of stitching here within our seam allowance. I put 1 centimeter seam allowance for this part. So we put the longest stitch on our sewing machine so that we can gather this whole side from notch to notch, okay? So just go on your sewing machine, do 2 rows of stitching with the longest stitch you have on your sewing machine for gathering this side. Let's go and do that now. Okay, so I've done that. So next we're going to gather this whole side to match with the edge of our little cutout piece here, okay? So let's do that. Next, get your little cutout piece. We're gonna lay it on top of the dress, right sides facing like this, and we're going to match all the edges here, pinning along as we go. Let's do that. Make sure your gathering is spread out evenly. So take this to your sewing machine or serger and sew along this seam here with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. If you are doing it on the sewing machine, make sure to use the zigzag stitch so that this continues to stretch along with the fabric. Let's do that. Okay, now so that's done. We've attached the 2 pieces together. So now you're gonna take your back piece and lay it on top of the front piece, right sides facing, and pin along the shoulders. Now take this to your sewing machine and sew along the shoulder seams here with a zigzag stitch, or sew it on your overlocker, okay? Whilst we're there, we're going to take our facing pieces, lay them right sides facing, and we're going to pin along the shoulder seams here. Take them to your overlock or sewing machine and sew along the shoulder seams as well. Let's do that. Okay, now so we've joined our shoulder seams and we've done the same on the facing piece. We joined the shoulder seams together as well. So now get your facing piece and we're going to match the shoulder seams and pin along the whole neckline. So we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and sew along the whole neckline here with a zigzag stitch. When we finish with that, we're gonna understitch this facing. So just roll the facing on top of the seam allowance and just do another tiny zigzag stitch right round, okay? Just on the facing side. When we finish that, we're also going to overlock the whole edge for the facing piece. Overlock the whole edge. Okay, so whilst we're there, we're going to attach our sleeves as well. So just lay your dress facing up like this. Get your sleeve pieces, make sure you've got the right sleeve for the armhole, and just match all your notches as you go along. Pin the sleeves along for both sides. Now take this to the sewing machine again and sew along the armholes for both sleeves with a zigzag stitch, or just overlock both. Let's do all those stages together now. Okay, now so the sleeves are attached for both armholes. And I also went ahead and finished off my neckline. So for the neckline, I did a tiny zigzag stitch there so that it can be able to stretch along. You want your head to be able to get in here, okay? And I also went ahead and understitched it, as you can see the second row of stitching, and I also ironed it nice and flat. So now the final step for our neckline is to just go in the ditch here and attach the facing to the dress for both sides, okay? When we finish with that, we're gonna turn our dress to the wrong side. Like this. And we're going to pin along the side seams from the sleeve hem all the way down to the dress hem, making sure to match all the notches for both sides. Let's do that. So now take this to your sewing machine and sew along the whole side seam from the hem to the sleeve hem, okay? With a zigzag stitch. I'm going to be using my overlocker for this, so I'll just overlock both sides. Let's do that. Okay, now, so I finished attaching my facing to the dress for both sides. And I also went ahead and finished off my side seams. So now our final step is to hem our dress and sleeves. So first we're just gonna overlock right round, and then we're going to turn our hem under 2 centimeters, and we're going to give it a twin needle stitching for both the sleeves and the hem. Let's do that. Okay, now, so I finished hemming my dress and the sleeves as well with the twin needle stitching. Here, nice and neat. And the dress is finished, and I'm quite happy with the result. Thank you.